Here is one of a series of talks by spiritual leader Lola McDowell Lee, spanning 2 decades from the early 70s through the 90s. Lola was a Zen Roshi, whose Rinzai lineage included Dr. Henry Plutov and renowned Zen master Shigetsu Sasaki. Lola was a religious scholar as well as an ordained Christian minister. While the talks are focused mainly on Zen and Buddhism, Lola drew on many spiritual traditions, including those of Jesus, Plato, Lao Tzu, the Hindu Vedas, Meister Eckhart, and Gurdjieff.
For nearly 20 years, Hong, a layman, devoted himself to the study of Zen. And he lived at Yakusan Temple, and he undertook the discipline under Master Egon. The day came when he decided to return to his family. So the master asked 10 of his disciples to see him off at the gate. It was snowing. And Hong, looking up, said, "Lovely. Snowflakes as beautiful as these don't fall elsewhere." "Elsewhere," said one of the 10. "Where is this elsewhere?" And at this, Hong slapped his face. "Why did you do that, dear layman?" asked the disciple, rubbing his cheek. "How can you pose as a Zen man?" Hong said angrily. "And you," said the disciple, "what about yourself?" So Hong slapped him again. "Huh? You have eyes, but you don't see," he said over his shoulder as he moved off. "And you have a mouth, but you're dumb." Little Zen stories, huh? Little Zen stories. Well, we're starting now with a week of meditation, so-called meditation. And let me say that if you really want to enter meditation, time should be of no concern. If you're in a hurry, then nothing is possible. And you know, we in the West here, we're very time conscious. We're in a big hurry. We're going. Where are you going? In such a hurry. Speeding to get, because time is so short. It's like we're like the pilot. There was a pilot, and he was communicating to his passengers, and he says to them over the intercom, "It seems that everything's going wrong. The radar's not functioning, the radio is out of order, and even the compass is out of order. It won't function. But don't worry, we're keeping up the same speed." That's about what we're like, isn't it? Yeah, everything goes wrong, but we're in there. We're really in there. Well, where are you going? For what are you speeding? Are you speeding so fast that you have no time to look at where you are? People, they come and they want to learn how to sit. And then they say, "Well, now I only have so much time. Can I learn to meditate in one day?" Well, and so I've only got this one day or whatever, And so can you give me a clue to the secret of this true identity so I can do it fast? is your true identity? Is God, something that somebody can give you as a gift? Do you not have it already? No. Do you really think that God is hidden in some kind of a formula? And that once you know the formula, you're all set? Well, I guess that's true. You know what the formula is? You all know it. It's you. Huh? Yeah. Anyway, the search takes tremendous patience. You search and you just forget about time. You forget about it. Now, time in our day and age, it seems to be rather a very anxious state of mind. And never minding what time really is. Time is a state of mind, and it's stress, and it's anxiety. We're too worried about tomorrow. We're worried about the future. And we're worried about the past. We worry tremendously about the past. Do you know how much you worry about the past? You keep trying to put it in the future, because then you're going to solve what happened in the past. So you keep trying to project it over there. So you must be very worried about the past. And worried because you haven't gained from the past what you think you should have gained. What you gained from the past didn't put you on top of the heap. You know something? There isn't any top to any heap. Yeah. There isn't any heap to be on top of. You're not even on top of yourself. And then so you worry. Maybe the future is going to be just like the past. Nothing. It's going to be a nothing. And so you're in a hurry. And you know something? The hurry doesn't help. Now, there are people this day and age who say that modern man is moving away from God because modern man is very materialistic. What's his name? Macmillan, who used to be Prime Minister of England, he was on TV last night. He says, it's turning. We have discovered that science does not have all the answers. So people are beginning to look for something more again. Very interesting. Anyway, but whether he looks for God or whether he doesn't, man is materialistic. Aren't you? You're materialistic, huh? You have to take care of your body. In a way, that's materialism. You need a house, you need clothes, and you need food. And you've got to take care of this thing, this beautiful thing. When you know what it is, beautiful thing. Not what you see right now, but if you saw with other than your senses, beautiful thing. Yeah. Now, science is not against God. They're investigating and trying to find also. And feelings are not against God. No. But we seem to have such difficulties. Could it be that it could be our time consciousness? We're so much in a hurry that there is an inner dimension of us that we miss. This inner dimension, now we could use a Sanskrit term and call it prajna, wisdom, a profound intuition. Yeah. This can be approached when you are absolutely patient, present and patient. Now, it's true that if you're very patient, there's some things you're going to miss. But you will not miss yourself. So patience is the hook for yourself, not for the other. If you want to create an empire and have lots of possessions, then hurry. Time is money. Yeah. But unless you achieve yourself, unless you come to yourself, what point have you come to with all your empire and possessions? In the final analysis. So, when you sit for meditation, you drop time consciousness. You just drop time. Time, it's not going anywhere either. It's always available. As soon as you come out of the meditation, there's time again. Time is not like money. Time is like the sky. It's always available. You can never exhaust it. So don't run after it. You can be at ease. Time will wait for you. You be at ease, searching yourself, and you can relax with yourself. And then you can sit like the Buddha. You've seen pictures of statues of him. He's just sitting there. Sitting and sitting and sitting and sitting. No time. Are you getting warm in here? Let's open some windows. I'm getting warm in here. Now it's said in an old Zen story, I'm going to tell you this little story. Once there were two monks, and they were crossing a stream in a ferry boat, and there was a boatman with them taking them over. And one of the monks was very old, and one of the monks was very young. And these two monks, when they got off the boat on the other shore, they turned around and asked the boatman, "Will it be possible for us to reach the town before the sun sets?" Now, it was a hilly track. It was rough terrain, and the sun was just going down. So they had at most an hour before it was dark. And once it was dark, the gates of the town closed. And they wouldn't be able to get in, because in this hilly terrain, this mountainous terrain around this little town, it was dangerous. There were wild people and there were wild animals, and if they didn't reach within the gates, by the time night came, they would have to remain in this wilderness the whole night. So the boatman said to them, "You can reach it if you go slowly." Now the old man understood this. Old age moves slowly. Youth is in a hurry. And that's paradoxical when you stop and think about it. Yeah? Old man should be in a hurry because time is short. And the young man is in a hurry even though there's enough time. Paradoxical, huh? Well, they say hurry comes from ignorance. Yeah. But an old man, a mature man, he can understand. No hurry. Go slowly. So this young man, this young monk, he looks at these other two and he says, "You're fools, both of you. How can one reach if one goes slowly?" And he started running. And soon they couldn't see him anymore. And the old man, he started plodding along, and after a while, down in a ravine, he sees a young monk who had fallen. He fell down, and he was hurt, and all his things were scattered all over. And the old man stood there, and he looked at him, and he was old. He couldn't bring him up. And, blood was running all over the place, and he was crippled, and the old man, in his own agony of seeing this, cried out to the young monk, and he said, "Now how will you reach?" What was the old man to do? Stay there with him and get killed too? He couldn't help him. So he went on his way. How sorrowful he must have been, huh? But he reached the door just in the nick of time, and he entered the city. Now that's an old Chinese Zen story. And don't just take it on the surface, huh? There's much more to it than just meets the eye, huh? For instance, who is this old man, this old monk? Who is this new monk? There's a lot hidden in these little stories. Anyway, this is rough terrain. It's hilly, rough terrain. And there are valleys and there are peaks. And you do climb up and you feel elated and you do fall down, and many times. But you have to reach the gate before the gate closes. And if you run fast, you will not reach it, because you will be running so fast you cannot be conscious. It's just busy. It's speed. It's anxiety. They say that people that speed a lot, it's a kind of an intoxication. Speed all the time releases certain chemicals in the body. And they're intoxicating. Like people that speed in cars all the time. And that more people die in cars every year than die in the war. And yet people go on getting more and more and more and more speeding, and they think it's smart. And they're never aware of themselves. Because they're not in their minds. They're intoxicated. The speed has taken over. The other day, coming along Escondido Boulevard, somebody has a nice little truck, little pickup, and the rear, how the rear end is up, it's all painted white, and it's got a pretty blue and red trim on it and everything, and on the back of it he's got written, "Instant Insanity." Really cute, huh? Yeah. Now, the Buddha, after many years of training, reached a particular place within himself, and then he sat under the Bodhi tree, the tree of wisdom, for 6 years. So what was he doing? Slowing down, relaxing. Where there is no speed, where there is nobody running, in that moment, awareness happens. So one learns to eat slowly, to walk slowly, to talk slowly, to move with yourself. If you're running, you leave yourself behind, because you're not conscious of yourself. So you move with yourself. And if you move with yourself, if you're really with yourself, you will come to know yourself. You will come to know the beauty of yourself, which is something other than some of this garbage that we carry around. And then you're not intoxicated when you know yourself. You're aware and you're conscious. Now, in this speed and in this hurry, in the intoxication of it, people sometimes have the vision, shall we call it, for lack of a better word. And so right away, because they've been speeding and they're not aware of themselves, they say, oh, I am enlightened. Huh? Now they're deceiving themselves. And the problem is that they go out and they tell other people this, and other people don't know the difference, so they believe them, and so they deceive others. You must always be very careful what you do to others. So you never pose. You've got to watch yourself carefully enough to know what a pose is. How can you ever be spontaneous? Just the spontaneousness of life itself, of this energy rising, if you're going to pose. And our minds are very cunning. And I could say, you know, some people go to a teacher and they pose. You know, do you do that? Huh? Why, they go and they would like to show their knowledge of what they have learned or what they have experienced. They would like to show that they've attained something. And the very effort to show that they have attained something, this showing off, shows that they have attained nothing. You know, when the attainment is, the exhibitionist is not. There's no need to pose. You see? You don't pose, you're simply present. You're with yourself. But you know, deceiving others is our very regular habit. We do it all the time. We do it in a way to deceive ourselves. And so we do it without knowing that we're doing it, because we're not aware of ourselves. Now, if it is such an old, regular habit pattern, how can you suddenly drop it? It takes patience and takes lots of observation. You know, Mahakashapa, who was a great disciple who took over after Buddha, the Buddha's mantle, as it were, fell on him. And there was another great one, Sariputra, you know, great intellects, great men, you know. They were disciples of the Buddha. And so they came and joined what is called the Sangha, the community of monks, you know. But the Buddha wouldn't work with them. These great men, already, you know, attained and teachers in their own right. And the Buddha wouldn't work with them. And Sariputra in particular kept questioning, you know. And finally Buddha says, you stick around for a couple of years. So, and Sariputra would say, why? Why do I have to wait 2 years? You know, and the Buddha answered, just to provide a gap for your old habits to drop away. You know, people come in here and, you know, and they think, well, this is a pretty neat place, and I'll get enlightenment in the next couple of months, and, you know, and be on my way. And you've never ever given yourself a chance to let the old habits drop. You don't even give them a chance to slow down. You know, and if these old habits just persist, you don't listen to me. Old habits won't allow you to. So be silent. I keep drumming this. Be silent. Be watchful. And in this silence and in this watchfulness, you can become aware of the things you have been doing without knowing you were doing them. Don't pose. If you pose, that which is authentic in you cannot surface. Because the posing and the always habits, it's all around you. It surrounds you. If you have too many faces, how will the original face surface? Don't you think it's time that you looked at yourself? Listening maybe is very nice, but you should apply some of this stuff. Anyway, for nearly 20 years, Hung, a layman, devoted himself to the study of Zen. He didn't think anything about it. It was 20 years. He didn't think about any kind of time. He lived at this Yakusan temple, and he undertook the discipline under this particular Roshi, who, by the way, was a very famous Roshi. 20 years, 1/3 of his life. And he waited as if there were no time. He was not in any hurry. And, people in this day and age, 2 days, is a long time. 1 week should be sufficient. 2 months? 2 years? 20 years? Why, it seems like a whole lifetime. But he devoted his energy to his search. Once upon a time there was an old man, and he was dying. And he called his son to him. And he said to his son, I would like if you would attain to meditation before I die. Because in my whole life I have come to realize that nothing is more important. So I'm not giving you wealth. I'm not giving you prestige. I'm not giving you the power of this world. My gift to you is to tell you to go to a teacher and learn meditation. I would like to see your meditative face before I die. Now the boy was fearful about leaving his father. The father was old, and any day he could die. He was sick. But the father insisted, you have to go. And being in Japan, he had to go. So, anyway, he reached the local Zen Roshi and told him of his predicament. My father would like to see my meditative face before he dies. So just tell me, how long will it take me to become meditative? And the Zen master looked at him and said, 3 years. Now, the young man thought for a moment, and then he looked at this old Roshi again, and he says, I will make as much effort as possible. I will put my whole energy into it. Then how long will it take? And the Roshi looked at him and said, 30 years. And this boy looks at him and says, what are you saying? First it was 3 years and now it's 30 years? And the Roshi said, well, I thought at the beginning you would put your total energy into it, and that's why I said 3 years. But when you say, now I will put my energy into it, then I will say 30 years. And if you ask me once more about time, I will tell you 90 years. But the boy said, but my father's dying. And the Roshi said, well, what can I do? Everybody dies somewhere. That's not my concern. And it isn't. Meditation doesn't bother about who is dying or not dying. What do you think Jesus meant when he said, let the dead bury the dead? So and this Roshi says to him, now don't ask about time again or you won't be accepted. And this boy, he'd been watching this Roshi. And he was the right man. There was a quality with him. It's like a fragrance, it is called. You come into a room and you smell roses. There's got to be roses someplace. So he watched this Roshi, and there was some kind of a quality about him. Fragrance, huh? This Roshi had it. So the boy says, okay, I will never ask about time again. And you start teaching. Good, says this teacher now. You clean the house. You clean the temple. When the time is right, I will start. Three years passed. No word from the Roshi. Not one. But by now, this young boy had become much more perceptive. And he could understand, he was beginning to understand how foolish he had been. He cleaned the temple all day long. He cleaned the house, he cleaned the temple. Now, cleaning a house, cleaning the temple, is not really a mental thing. I mean, you're cleaning and you see what has to be done, and your mind says, oh yeah, let's do this, and then let's, and you do it to the best of your ability. But that's not really so much mental. You do it with your body. Cleaning house is something you do with your body, and the mind follows. And if you just do, he did the same thing over and over and over and over for 3 years. And if you just do with the body, finally the mind comes to a halt. The thinking is not so all-encompassing. You can ignore it. And then you're beginning to be aware of what you're doing when you're cleaning the house. Something in you becomes aware. Then one day, after 3 years, the Roshi started his teaching. What did he do? You'll never guess, unless you know the story. Huh? He came up from behind the boy with a wooden sword and started attacking him, And the boy dodged and all over the place, he's dodging his sword. And after a while, this Roshi stops and he says, this is my first teaching. But remember, at any moment, I will attack. Any moment. So be alert. Huh? Don't just clean and sweep. Be alert. After all, I'm a dangerous man. With his sword running around, of course he is. It's a wooden sword, And the attacks continued. Not once a day, but maybe 20 times a day. He would sneak up behind him all of a sudden and jump. And so this boy learned to be extremely alert. No matter what he was doing, he was always aware of what he was doing and what was around him. 3 months it took. And he was so alert, he had learned the trick of dodging. And guess what? He was extremely happy. He was alert. Well, the story goes on and on and on and on, because one day, after the 3 months, the teacher comes to him and he says, now you will have to learn how to be alert at night. So even in his sleep, he had to be alert, because the teacher would come in with this wooden sword and hit at the bed, and the boy would have to roll out of it and get out of the way in order not to be struck, He had to be agile, alert. And then it goes on that one day the teacher comes in, when he learns this, the teacher comes and tells him, well, now we're going to exchange the wooden sword for a real one. And this went on for a while, and then one day the Roshi says to him, okay, you're ready to go back to your father. And the boy attacked the Roshi. And the Roshi was just as alert. See? They had come together. There's an old Zen saying, when the student sees like the teacher, they see eyebrow to eyebrow. because of Bodhidharma's big eyebrows, huh? Yeah. Okay. In the meditation, when you sit for meditation, there's no time. Meditation is beyond time. Real meditation transcends time. And it is beyond space. It transcends space. No, you can remember when you've really been in deep meditation. You don't know what time it is. Huh? You don't know where you are. Not when you're in meditation. And if you go deeper than that, you don't know who you are. And when you reach a place you don't know who you are at the beginning of truth. The beginning. And I'm getting you all geared up. A week coming up, huh? And Zen as such does not believe in renouncing the world. The basic thing about it, about religion, they say, is not the world, nor renouncing the world. The basic thing is to be alert and aware wherever you are. And they say your lifestyle doesn't matter, but you are matters. So in your everyday life, get this alertness. You don't just look at the flowers and say, oh, how pretty they are. You have a deep alertness looking at the flowers. You see something entirely different. And there's an old Zen koan, that before you are enlightened, rivers are rivers and mountains are mountains. And then at a particular stage in the ongoing, when you actually start meditating, then rivers are no longer rivers and mountains are no longer mountains. And then comes the illumination or the enlightenment, and everything falls back into place, and rivers are rivers and mountains are mountains. The world settles down again, but in a totally different place. But rivers are rivers and mountains are mountains. Yeah. Anyway, let's go back to this guy that's leaving the temple after 20 years. The Master Egon there asked 10 of the disciples, to see him off at the gate. Now, we could look at this 10. Parenthetically, I'm going to take it off for just a minute. These 10 is rather symbolic, huh? We have 5 senses. We have the sense of touch and smell and sight and hearing and taste. The 5 senses, huh? We have 5 corresponding inner senses. So we've got 5 for moving out and 5 for moving in a manner of speaking. Outer senses have 2 vehicles. We've got 2 eyes, 2 ears, 2 hands, 2 lips, and 2 nostrils. Duality. We are born into duality. Yeah. Now, the 5 senses through which you enter the inner is one vehicle. It is one eye. It is called the single eye, and of which Jesus said, if thine eye be single, thine whole house shall be filled with light. Yeah. And in St. Thomas, as I am so fond of quoting, the disciples ask, when are they going to get to the kingdom? When are they going to see this kingdom? And Jesus answers them and says, when you make the male and the female into a single one, and when you make the eye in a place of an eye, and a hand in a place of a hand, and a foot in place of a foot, and an image in the place of an image, then you shall enter the kingdom. And he didn't lie, Anyway, it's snowing. Those of you who were there, you can go back and picture yourselves at the gate of Shoginji, huh? Only there it was raining. Anyway, it's snowing. And Hone, looking up, he says, lovely. Snowflakes as beautiful as these don't fall elsewhere. Well, last summer school we had something about this, and snowflakes as beautiful as these don't fall in any particular place. That's another translation, and so it takes on a little different meaning then. But today we've got this thing. They don't fall elsewhere. Well, being in this world that we are in, we all use words. Now, it is said that those who know use words a little differently than those who do not know. Because we do remember that the sense of the word comes from the user and not the word. Now, Hone saying, snowflakes as lovely as these do not fall elsewhere. He is not comparing. Understand this. We would compare, we'd say here and there, but this man is not comparing. He is expressing how he feels at this particular moment. If he went 2,000 miles away and he saw the snowflakes falling, he would say the same thing. So what did he mean? Snowflakes as lovely as these do not fall elsewhere. What did he mean? And this, one of the little monks, of the 10 monks that came to the gate with him, he says, elsewhere? Where is this elsewhere? He also had studied Zen, read about it. But this monk doesn't understand. And so Hone slapped his face. Well, have you ever noticed that if somebody slaps you, and it can be a slap by a word, as well as by a hand or by a stick, suddenly your mind stops. That's how you stop a person from continuing hysteria. You slap their face. The mind stops. And these clackers that we've got, at the end of a sit, sometimes, especially the first few times you hear them, all of a sudden the mind stops. And in that moment where that mind has stopped, what you are searching for could surface. If you watch yourself, you can see it happening. The mind stops and everything seems to splinter, and then everything comes back together again. But in that moment when it is all splintered, what's present? See, there's no time really involved. Now, and the Zen Roshis, they use sticks, and they use slapping, and they use yelling, And it's not a punishment. It is to awaken the individual. If you're too concerned about the slapping, and why you were slapped, and, poor me, now they hit me, and I don't like it, and I don't think I deserved it, and blah, 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 You make a question out of the slapping. And what you're doing is trying to assert yourself into a particular position. And so you miss. The point is not to make a question, but to be aware of what is happening. And it is happening to you. Where are you? But this little disciple back at the gate, he projects his ego, and he questions. And this Hon who says to him, how can you pose as a Zen man? And you, the disciple, cries right back again, and you, what about yourself? See? So Hon slapped him again. Surely the monk should have awakened by now. But Hon walks away and he says, you have eyes and you won't see, and you got a mouth, but you're dumb. Instead of looking at himself in that moment, that little monk, he begins to chatter. Mechanically. No observation. And it's dumb. A mouth is not dumb when it is used by silence. People talk out of a need. They got to hear themselves because then they know they're there. I guess. And they talk and they talk and they talk and they talk. What are they avoiding? Silence. And mostly what they're talking about is all monologue anyway. The other guy who is supposed to be listening is just waiting for the opportunity. The other one can shut up for a minute so he can put his oar in. They don't hear what you say. Obviously. Huh? Yeah. That's how we are. So we should begin to watch this stuff. When a Roshi speaks, it's like when a Roshi gestures. And I'm reminding you back there of Shogenji, of how Tani Roshi moved. And when he is acting as Roshi, what's in his voice. Because I remember a conversation I had with him about the silence that was there. And it wasn't just silent, it's silent outside now too, huh? I don't mean that kind of silence. But it was so silent there that it just automatically led to the other silence. And then there was this crow. And so we were talking, and I said something about the crow, And he says, makes the silence deeper. Yeah. Where do your words come from? Do they come from silence? Or are you just here on the surface mesmerized by your words? Lots of people, they're like the sky in a storm. Sky in a storm's all covered with clouds. And so we're all covered with thoughts. That you can't see. So silence. Empty sky. First you attain to the silence, and then what you've got to say has some significance. And not blank mind, that's not silence. And even if you were deaf and dumb and couldn't hear a sound, that's not the silence that I have reference to. There is a silence that has tremendous depth. And it's in you. Are you so busy that you can't even see it? There is a great silence at the heart of you. Do you know that consciousness is silent? Do you know that God is silent? What are you jabbering about? There is a story about the 5 little monks who discovered chaos. And they saw that chaos had no way of communicating because it didn't have any eyes, and it didn't have any ears, and it didn't have any mouth, and didn't have any whatever, you know. So it had no way of communication. So they decided they would help chaos. There's no Chinese story. So every day they went and they drilled a hole in chaos. And he disappeared. You know what chaos is? Huh? It is that which is before cosmos. Cosmos means order. Chaos doesn't mean it's all jumbled up like that. Chinese could have used maybe better words than chaos. In the void. We say in the beginning was a void. Darkness was on the face of the deeps. And these little monks saw this. And so they drilled all these holes. And the void disappeared. Okay, I will see you tonight at 7:30. And now may the peace and the power that passeth all understanding hold us and keep us in the love of the Christed consciousness while we are seemingly separate one from another. And I thank you very much.
If you find Lola's talks valuable, more will be posted in weeks to come.